Hi guys, this video is for Out Out, just looking at what it's about and what sorts of things you can say about it. So first of all, if you haven't read the poem, make sure that you pause this and you read it through or listen to a recording of it on YouTube. In a nutshell, it is about a boy who is sawing logs for his family, probably to keep warm for a fire, and when his sister calls him in for supper, his hand slips and gets cut off by the saw that he was using. And then when he goes to see the doctor and he has his hand amputated, he's given an anesthetic called ether. It's an old anesthetic, and it actually kills him. And when he ends up dying, the last two lines of the poem suggest that everyone just moved on with life, and it's very cold at the end, detached. So first off, why did Frost call it Out Out? Well, he's alluding to a speech from Shakespeare's Macbeth. When Macbeth's wife has just died, he says, "Out, out, brief candle," and commenting on how short life is, how frail life is, and how pointless it is. He uses the phrase, life is like an hour on a stage. It's very short. It's like you've been here an hour. So that is why he called it Out Out. The form and structure of the poem, it's in blank verse, which means that there's 10 syllables in a line, although Frost isn't very strict when it comes to meter, and so occasionally you might see 9 or 11. And there's no set rhyme scheme, so this is very common for Frost to do. You'll see the same blank verse in Birches. So the first line says, "The buzzsaw snarled and rattled in the yard." The use of the word snarled suggests that, it makes the saw sound like an animal. Makes it sound dangerous, vicious, and the use of sibilants could suggest that it's got a sinister atmosphere, almost like this hissing. Rattled is an onomatopoeia. It also makes the saw, just reinforces the idea like it's a machine. So the saw made dust and dropped stove-length sticks of wood. Now, you've got the alliteration of dust and dropped. I guess you could argue, I just thought of this now, that the saw made dust, and there's the expression or the verse in the Bible about how you return to dust, from dust, and you'll return to dust. So you could say that the saw has killed him, and it's reduced the boy just to ashes. So it made dust and dropped stove-length sticks of wood, sweet scented stuff when the breeze drew across it. More sibilants. And from there, those that lifted eyes could count 5 mountain ranges, one behind the other, under the sunset, far into Vermont. So Frost is just basically setting up the setting. It sounds like the poem is actually set in New Hampshire, and you can see Vermont across the mountains. There's this repetition of the saw snarled and rattled, snarled and rattled. You could say the repetition is like the repetitiveness of sawing, but probably a little more perceptive is it's just emphasizing how dangerous and vicious and potentially sinister the saw is. Then we've got, as it ran light, and what Frost means by that is in between logs, or had to bear a load, when it's actually having to cut the logs. And the having to bear a load sounds like it should be with a person, and so that's a personification. And nothing happened. Day was all but done. So the alliteration could suggest the finality of the day being over. However, the boy's work was not over. So call it a day. I wish they might have said. So this is the first time where the speakers, we've got first person with the speaker talking. There we go, sorry. And it's kind of just like expressing sadness about what's about to happen in the poem. Like, call it a day, I wish they would have said, because then the boy would still be alive. So, to please the boy by giving him the half an hour that a boy counts so much when saved from work. So even though day was almost done, he had to keep working. The fact that it's a boy doing a man's job, and the use of the word boy suggests that he's young and he's innocent, and he shouldn't be doing this, he shouldn't have died, this shouldn't have happened. His sister stood beside him in her apron to tell them supper. At the word the saw, as if to prove Sauce knew what supper meant, leapt out at the boy's hand, or seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. However it was, neither refused the meeting. Sorry, my lights went off in my room. So, Frost devotes 4 lines to something that takes a millisecond. We've got the saw, we've got, again, personifying the saw, making it seem as if it's alive. He must have given the hand, the alliteration could have created a sense of breathlessness. However, neither refused the meeting, and the fact that it says he must have given, the word given, the hand, it almost sounds pleasant. But the hand, exclamation mark. The boy's first outcry was a rueful laugh, so it's almost like he's just in shock. Rueful means expressing sorrow or regret, especially in a slightly humorous way. So kind of just like his first instinct was to laugh. As he swung toward them, holding up the hand, half an appeal. So appeal is a serious or urgent request. It could also be used to apply to a higher court for a reversal of a decision. So appeal to the fact that he wishes this didn't happen. So he holds his hand up, half an appeal, but also half just to keep what Frost says, the life from spilling. And he uses the word life instead of blood. You could say this suggests the seriousness of the injury, just the fact that your blood could represent life because that's what keeps you alive. And if your life is spilling out of you, then you're losing your life. Then the boy saw all. Now this is a pun on the word saw. Obviously like what his hand got cut off with, but also he saw all. So he's got this understanding. He realizes the severity of the injury, and the dash could also reinforce this pause, this realization. Since he was old enough to know, big boy, doing a man's work through a child's heart, though a child at heart, he saw all spoiled. So the word spoiled suggests there's no going back. Don't let him cut my hand off. The doctor, when he comes, don't let him, sister. The repetition of don't let him could suggest his fear, his anxiety, and this is the first time we actually hear the boy's voice. The use of the one-word sentence so. The boy's hand had been amputated, and you could say, like the one-word sentence, it was final, it was brief. The sentence is cut off, as is his hand. Caesura, C-A-E-S-U-R-A, is when you have punctuation in the middle of a line, which we do see quite a bit in this poem, but especially here with so, and it just disrupts the flow. It's in this case, it's choppy. I don't want to say like chopping off a hand, but that's what I thought of. So the doctor put him in the dark of ether. Now, ether is an old anesthetic. He lay and puffed his lips out with his breath, and then the watcher at his pulse took fright. No one believed. They listened at his heart. Little, less, nothing, and that ended it. No more to build on there. We've got a series of short sentences, perhaps suggesting how fast it happened. And you have, back then, their anesthetics weren't as good as they are now. I mean, anesthetics even today can be dangerous, but in that case, it was the anesthetic that ended up killing him. So you've got the rule of 3 here with little, less, nothing, and just in the end, we have a senseless death. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. So no more to build on there. We've got some connotations of work, which we will talk about in a second. And who they are, his family, we assume. since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. So it doesn't sound like there is a whole lot of emotion. It's quite detached, seems cold, suggesting that they moved on with life, perhaps just because they had to, an emotional disconnect. Life goes on. So this could be a commentary on the nature of death in an industrialized world, which links to the connotations of work with build on there, no more to build on there, and saying basically, like, at the time, like in factories and industry, people didn't matter, and when people died in, you know, in the factories or wherever they were, it didn't really affect people. Yeah, like, oh, well, they can't work anymore, and that was it, because the only thing you were good for was work. It could also, and this is what we talked about mostly in class today when we briefly went over the poem, was that it suggests that people didn't value human life during World War I. Like, Frost wrote this at the peak of World War I, and like Birch's, you can apply like the interpretation that the poem is actually not just literally about a boy who was sawing and got his hand cut off and then died. It's about soldiers who are boys. I mean, they're young, they're innocent, and they're sent to do, you know, the man's work, and they're hurt and they die, and nobody cares about them. The people that sent them to war, and life just goes on, and it brings us back to the title with how life it's frail and it's short, and in a way it's pointless. Like, he shouldn't have died, and senseless deaths, just like what Frost probably thought with war. So if you have any questions about Out, feel free to ask me. You're also welcome to use, you know, Google, YouTube, other things to help give yourself some ideas. You're getting 5 points for your annotations, which you can use things in this video or on the internet or just from your own head. And then 5 points for your summary, which is going to ask you about how Frost explores the idea of war in this poem. Thank you for watching.